Hello out there. Thank you for tuning in for episode 15 of Wine with Wanda. I really appreciate you all taking this journey with me. Today we are traveling to some place where the air is crisp and the wines are sparkling and full of life. We're traveling to the north of Italy and we're going to Trentino. And our guide for this wonderful journey will be Camilla Lunelli, who's proprietor and also director of PR and communication for Ferrari Trento Lunelli Group. Now, Trentodoc, if you don't know it, is one of the most fabulous sparkling wines in the world and is generally considered Italy's most impressive sparkling wine. And when we talk about Trentodoc, we have to talk about Ferrari. Ferrari was founded in 1902 by Giulio Ferrari, and he was a visionary. He really knew intuitively that where he was in Trentino, wines that could compete with champagne in terms of complexity and authenticity, that it was possible. And he's actually responsible for the first significant plantings of Chardonnay in Italy. So it's safe to say that his dream has come to fruition. Ferrari produces Italy's most awarded sparkling wines, and they even have beat out champagne as Sparkling Wine Producer of the Year at the Champagne and Sparkling Wine World Championships. The Lunelli family has owned Ferrari since 1952, and they've not only nurtured Giulio Ferrari's legacy, they've taken it to heights that I'm sure he never even envisioned. So I'm going to pull Camilla into the conversation in a moment. While we're talking, I'm going to be sipping the Ferrari Brut Rosé, which is a really beautiful wine for this time of year. It's about $36.99 in the US. And now we're going to add in Camilla. Here we go. All right. Always fun waiting for this connection to happen. So far, so good. And there's beautiful Camilla.
Nice to see you. Ciao.
Nice to see you. How are you?
Good, good. A very tough and unusual period, but we keep going with the same enthusiasm and passion as usual.
Absolutely. You know, when we last saw each other, you know, it was last fall, and it's amazing. That seems like a lifetime ago.
Unfortunately, yeah.
But, you know, I feel so, you know, really, you were my introduction to Trentodoc. I had not heard of it until I think we met for the first time about 5 years ago when you were in New York. And then to be able to visit you last fall and to see the vineyards and to see the mountains and that crisp, beautiful air. And really, it all comes together in the glass. So
Glad to hear that.
So, you know, before we get started, I thought it would be great, you know, for those watching who may not know what Trentodoc is, why don't we start with that, just to give a foundation?
With pleasure, because we're always very happy to talk about Trentodoc, even if we know that it's not such a well-known appellation outside of Italy, because the quality that the 55 wineries express is really a very high one. I don't know if you can hear me. I hear some noise on the background. Is that okay for you?
Oh, I can hear you. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, no problem.
Sorry about that. So Trentodoc has been the first appellation in Italy only dedicated to metodo classico, that is to say traditional method or méthode champenoise, sparkling wines in Italy back in 1993. And it only includes traditional method sparkling wines produced in the most located area of Trentino. For those who are not familiar with Trentino, Trentino is in the northeast of Italy, a very beautiful region, absolutely covered with mountains. So mountain is really the key feature for Trentodoc, and the fact that the Chardonnay and Pinot Noir are cultivated on the slopes of the Trentino vineyard really gives the elegance and finesse that we find in the glass.
That's right. And we should say the name Trentodoc is kind of clever. It combines Trento and Doc, D-O-C, which is great.
Denominazione di Origine Controllata, that's the appellation system in Trentino.
I'm so glad you pronounced that for me because I always stumble over it.
It's easy to pronounce for those who are not native Italian.
Exactly. Well, you know, we can't talk about Trentodoc. I mean, Ferrari is really the foundation of the Trentodoc story. And you mentioned the mountains, but what is it about these mountains and that altitude that makes these traditional method wines? They're not an imitation of champagne. They're something very special and different.
Absolutely. We always want to stress that the quality of our Trentodoc sparkling wine is easily comparable to champagne. And as we said, we also got very good satisfaction, most of all in blinding tasting. But when it comes to identity, we're really proud of our identity. We've been producing our wines for 120 years now. We have a very vocated territory, so we're not running after anyone. But what about the mountain? So the idea of Giulio Ferrari, who spent some time in the Champagne region after his studies in Italy, Germany, and in Montpellier, was that Trentino is completely different from the Champagne region. We are 1,000 kilometers southern, and they just have small hills in Champagne. We have high mountains. So what was his intuition? The fact that altitude in Trentino can do what latitude, so being so northern than we are, makes in Champagne. And that comes most of all to the point of diurnal shift in temperature between day and night. That's really key. And that's what we achieve on the slopes of our mountains, most of all during the summer, this time of year. Today, it's an incredibly warm days here in Trento. So it's really hot during the day, but during the night, the temperatures fall. And so this gap gives the possibility to the Chardonnay grapes, most of all, to develop a great range of aromas and also to maintain an important acidity. And that acidity is what gives the elegance and finesse in the glass to the wine.
Perfect, perfect. You know, what's also amazing about Ferrari, and I hope I have the latest numbers, but you represent about 20% of Italy's total production of Metodo Classico wines. You make about 5.5 million bottles a year, but you're always at such a consistent level of quality, even at that volume. And I'm just wondering, how do you balance that volume and still maintaining that level of quality?
That has been a great challenge that our family, the Lunelli family, has been fighting and I would say winning over the years. That's because producing large quantities, always being consistent in terms of quality without compromising quality is a big, big effort that requires really very strict quality control in every step of the production. And personally, I tell you, I'm more proud of the quality of, I don't know if you can see this bottle.
Yes.
Our flagship, I would say,
exactly.
bottle, which is produced in a couple of millions bottles. So it's really quite a huge number, always with the same quality over time, because it's a non-vintage wine. And I mean, whatever the bottle you buy in New York, the bottle I have here from the winery are always exactly the same quality. That's really tough to achieve, but that's why we have a very dedicated and passionate team of winemakers who really do not leave anything to the chance. You have to control everything very strictly from the vineyard to the table.
And we should say, Lunelli, this is really a family business. It's a family business.
Not in terms of ownership of the winery, of the group, also of the other companies that we carry out along with Ferrari, but also because we are really deeply and with all of our heart involved in running that. We are now, as of today, 4 cousins at the helm of the winery who for sure work with a very talented team of managers, but we really put all of our passion and heart into this winemaking adventure.
And I love your motto, the Italian art of living, you know, which I had a chance to experience a bit while I was there. And I love your website. It says the irresistible elegance of its bubbles celebrates Italy's lust for life and beauty. And I think that's so true.
We really like this. We think love is really a symbol, wine is a symbol of joy, of conviviality. So we want to really appreciate life and take advantage of that as much as we can.
And I have to say, you know, with my Italian friends in New York, anytime I show up with a bottle of Ferrari, they get so excited, whether they're from Puglia or Tuscany or Sicily or Alto Adige. It really is a wine that every Italian agrees on that they love, the quality they respect, and it feels like home to them. So I think there's such a strong emotional connection to the Ferrari brand.
I'm happy to hear that. You know, I think something which shows clearly what you have experienced in your own life is also the fact that the president of the Italian Republic has chosen Ferrari as the toast to welcome his guest at Finale in Rome, because it's really perceived as the Italian toast par excellence, not belonging only to Trentino or to a part of it, but really as a national wine.
Absolutely. Well, I think we should start. I know you have in your glass the Ferrari Brut, which is kind of your ambassador and welcomes the world.
Yeah, I actually, let me show you.
Just show the bottle.
Opened both Ferrari Brut and then the Rosé that we will taste together, because I thought it was nice to start with a Blanc de Blanc, as the
absolutely
Ferrari and Trentodoc is mainly built on Chardonnay that, as you mentioned, Giulio Ferrari has been the first to bring and cultivate in Italy. And Chardonnay is really the grape that found an incredible terroir here in this mountain and expresses such a finesse in Trentino. So Ferrari Brut, as I said, is a Blanc de Blanc, and it's all produced with traditional method, and it remains at least 24 months on the lees. This is much more than the disciplinary calls upon, but we found that if you work properly in the vineyard and in the winery, then each month you keep this wine on the lees before disgorgement, give it further complexity, so that it's really interesting. I think in the glass, it strikes for the great balance and harmony between the fruity note of Chardonnay, which gives, as I said, a very nice fruity note that reminds me personally, most of all, of golden apple. And that's probably mine, because I don't know if you remember from where you were when you were in Trentino, we cultivate a lot of golden apple here. So
I do remember.
Why I have it in my head so much. But also the balance is with the toasty note and all the more complex aromas that come from second fermentation in the bottle and from the long aging on the lees. So I think eventually the result is a very balanced, fresh, but also complex sparkling wine.
It really is. You know, for me, again, it strikes that sweet spot where if I serve it to friends who don't know a lot about wine, they go, oh, this is delicious. And friends who know a bit more, they catch the nuance, the complexity, the finesse. It's just it's a crowd pleaser in the best way, because it's really well made. So it's one of my favorites, and it's widely available in the US. I think it's about $27, $28. So definitely worth it.
Also, in terms of value for money, it's a very, very interesting bottle, honestly, for the kind of quality it delivers. And it's also very nice. Both the Ferrari Brut and I think the Rosé are really great and flexible when it comes to pairing. So not only for a toast, for an aperitivo, but also for accompanying the whole meal is really a great wine because of the structure and complexity that it has. So
that's true. That's a very good point. And, you know, definitely when I was visiting you last year, we saw how beautifully you could drink Ferrari from the beginning to the end of the meal, you know, because your portfolio, you have different expressions of Trentodoc. And so let's move to the rosé. You know, it is rosé season, but people, don't forget about sparkling rosé when you're doing rosé all day.
Rosé is really a big trend in the US in the recent years. But
yes,
on one hand, I think that sparkling rosé has always been maybe not so big in terms of numbers, but really appreciated in terms of quality, because a sparkling metodo classico from a technical point of view is really complex. In this Ferrari Rosé, for instance, we have a blend of Pinot Noir around 60% and Chardonnay. So blending the two vines is already not very easy job, but what's most of all complex is managing the skin contact of Pinot Noir during fermentation, because you know that Pinot Noir is a grape with a dark skin and wine.
Exactly.
We also have a sparkling wine at Trentodoc, which is Ferrari Nero, which is a white, let's say, sparkling coming just of Pinot Noir, a blended noir. So for the rosé, it's very hard, and every vintage is a new adventure to find the balance between the contact of the skin that usually is around 10 to 12 hours. But there are no fixed recipe in winemaking. So every harvest is really a new episode. So the Pinot Noir is vinified in rosé to find this balance, also in terms of colors, this antique rosé that I personally like a lot.
Oh, it's beautiful. The color is so captivating. And then you smell it. Those beautiful red cherry, raspberry, strawberry. It's just,
Yeah,
so pretty. Red currant.
Yeah, are definitely the one that strike at nose most of all, but they also are very nicely harmonized with the bread crust, the walnut, the almond that comes from secondary
Exactly.
fermentation and aging on the lees.
Does this also spend 24 months on the lees?
Exactly,
Okay.
exactly. And I think you can tell in the mouth how more structured it is compared to the Blanc de Blanc. I don't know if you agree with that.
It is. Yeah, you know, this drinks, this is very much like, this is definitely a wine that would pair beautifully with the meal. You know, I'm thinking salmon, roast chicken. It's just gorgeous. It has a nice body, but it's still very graceful, great acidity, it's crisp. But that Pinot Noir is blending really nicely with the Chardonnay, but it gives it that, you know, if you're thinking, wow, I want a red wine, but I'm not sure. This is kind of a nice,
Yeah.
happy medium.
And you know, a pairing that I really like a lot is with pizza. Maybe with a plain, simple pizza, I like the Ferrari Brut as well. But when it comes to more structured pizza, like with the salami, ham, and so on, I find that the rosé is really great. And the rosé, I think, also helps a lot in the pairing with tomato, because of the acidity. Tomato is not very easy to pair, but with the rosé, I think it really works well.
That's a good point. And, you know, I know you have such an impressive portfolio. I just want you to touch a little bit. You know, these are your two non-vintage wines, but I want those watching to know that you do make vintage wines and they age beautifully. I mean, really impressive winemaking. So do you want to talk a little bit about those?
With pleasure.
Yeah.
I actually have a wide range, as you said. We have 14 labels, all Trentodoc, all sparkling wine. But what's really great about that is that each of them is different in some way from the others, because we use two vines, two grapes, as I said, Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, but we also use different technique of vinification. For instance, we use oak for some of our cuvée, not for others. We can vinify the Pinot Noir in white. And also, time on lees is definitely a very a big issue. And we found that we like to say that Trentodoc wines wins the challenge of time, because think that we have one of our Riserva, Giulio Ferrari, that we dedicated to the founder, that ages more than 10 years. We just released Giulio Ferrari Riserva del Fondatore 2008 last month, which means 12 years of aging. And the complexity that wines acquire remaining on the lees so long is really amazing, without losing any freshness.
It really is. It is amazing, you know. And, you know, I know your cousin Marcello is there in the vineyard and making the wine. And it's like you said, with these two grapes, able to paint so many different pictures that are connected, but really shows the range of Trentodoc, and that it's not a one-dimensional wine.
No, very, very flexible.
So, I always love to ask, this is where I like to, we've been having fun. We get a little silly maybe. So I think all of us working in wine, we have things that annoy us, whether it's a trend or a misconception that people may have. For example, a lot of my friends think, the only sparkling wine from Italy is Prosecco, and that drives me crazy.
That's a big battle.
That's
We're fighting. And I say that as a family, we also own a Prosecco winery called
right, you do.
So we are also Prosecco producers. So I have nothing against Prosecco, but as you said, not all the Italian sparkling wine is Prosecco. And most of all, Trentodoc and Prosecco are so different because not only they're produced with different grapes, but Trentodoc is produced with the Champenois method, while Prosecco, it's a ferment Charmat method, so it's fermented in vats. It's very different. And I said each wine has its own dignity, but they're different for different occasions. So I perfectly agree on that.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, it's this time of social distancing, I think, has been a challenge for all of us, and especially we work in such a social industry. Um, so it's great that we can stay connected through technology, but most importantly, it may seem a cliche, but I think, wine keeps us connected. So when I sip Ferrari, it instantly takes me back to walking those vineyards, being at Locanda Margon, just the whole experience, making pizza, the band playing, it all comes back. So I think wine is such an important emotional asset.
I think that happened in the US as well during lockdown in Italy. Like everyone was having this virtual aperitivo before
Yes.
this big group of friends were gathering in front of Zoom or whatever, and have possibly the same kind of glass, and like they were having that together. So I agree. It did help to stay connected in a way.
It does. It does. Well, wherever you are with Ferrari, you can experience the Italian art of living, even in lockdown, even during social distancing. There's still things in life to celebrate, even during these dark days. So grab a bottle of Ferrari. The rosé is about $36.99. Beautiful wine. So Camilla, thank you so much.
Thank you very much to you. It was great seeing you again, and I hope we'll meet soon, either in Italy or in New York.
I hope so too. Stay safe.
Cheers.
Ciao. Bye.